Hi, everybody. We'll be starting in just a minute, so stay tuned. And are we ready to go? Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Heather Bryan, and I'm an education specialist with educationprojects.org. On behalf of our client, Ohio Corn and Wheat, I would like to welcome you all to the Technology Virtual Field Trip today. We're really excited for this opportunity to partner with the Ohio Department of Education to bring you the Feed and Fuel Your Future virtual learning series. Today, through the Ohio Corn and Wheat Education Program, Feed the World, we focus on engaging students on important issues such as sustainability, soil and water quality, energy, and biotechnology through science-based curriculum and classroom resources. There really is a lot of science and technology out there in agriculture today, so we're going to explore that today on our virtual field trip. Could you go to slide 2, please? In addition to today's virtual field trip, I just want to let you know about tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to do a predicting yield virtual lesson at 1 p.m. And then the following day on Thursday, we will finish up this series with a technology career panel. So please make sure you come back and you stay tuned for that. Today on our virtual field trip, we are going to talk with some industry experts from Becks Hybrids. Becks Hybrids is the largest family-owned retail seed company in the United States with access to the best genetics and trait technologies from suppliers worldwide. So it's really cool because Beck strives to provide customers with all the tools that they need to succeed on their farm. So not just seeds and genetic traits, but also technology like what we're going to learn about today. So today, the two industry experts that we will meet are Sheila Downey, who is the Regional Precision Technology Specialist for Becks Hybrids, as well as Jim Love, who is their Light Robotics Manager. So we're going to start today with Jim Love, and I'm going to let him introduce yourself. Hey, Jim.
Thank you, Heather. So my name is Jim Love. I've worked for Becks Hybrids for about 32 years now, and have had the opportunity to do a lot of things because Becks Hybrids in the course of 32 years has changed dramatically. And I oftentimes get asked if the job that I have today was the one I hired in for. And as you can imagine, 32 years ago, the concept of flying drones around farm fields was the term drone didn't even exist. And that wasn't part of anybody's vocabulary. And so when we first started, planter monitors were about as high tech as things got. Yield monitors hadn't even started at that point. And so during the course of my tenure with Becks, I started as a fertilizer and chemical manager. And so we initially started in technologies that included variable rate fertilizer applications and things like that, that in the early 90s were extremely challenging to do and took a lot of equipment. Every cab that we had looked like a spider's web nest of wires. And today, to do that same job is extremely easy. Technology has come a long way, and the integration in farm equipment has just been fantastic. So it's been really exciting to watch that grow. And so I've been blessed to start a job out of college, and I've stayed with the same company for over 30 years because oftentimes people need to change jobs to grow vocationally. And because the company that I work for has grown so much over the course of my career, that I've been able to do lots of different jobs within Becks Hybrids organization and keep fresh and keep exciting. And so the last job, the job that I have right now, is the Light Robotics Manager job. And so in that job, I basically created my own title and said, okay, as we watch some of these small robotics devices and even large robotics devices come into agriculture, how can we better utilize those to be beneficial to our clients and help them make money? Because if one thing that Becks Hybrids does that a lot of other companies don't do is that we take the time to test lots and lots of technologies that have nothing to do with our primary discipline, which is selling seed. But then we test those and we report back on those. And we try to make sure that we help our growers spend their dollars in a way that makes sense, so that when they go to the technology store, for lack of a better term, they buy technologies that put money back in their pockets. And so that's kind of what we're doing when we look at these drones. And so as we look at drones, from some of the smallest ones to some of the largest ones, we realize that there is an extremely wide range of drones out there. And so you see on the screen the Phantom 4, that is an exceptionally common drone. That drone will cost you about $1,200. And you can buy that thing at about any retail store, as far as you can buy them at Best Buys, or you can buy them in a hobby shop. And the cool thing about that is that drone today will gather data that just 5 years ago, we would have had to use a $25,000 drone to do that same job. And so it's opened this up. I saw that one of the questions that came in early was, how can we apply these to small farms? Well, as we look at some of the costs and how the cost has changed over time, we see that as we get down in that sub $2,000 range for a device that has multiple uses, then we can probably see how that we can use some of these. These are data gathering drones. So primarily what we do with a drone this size is we go out and gather data about a growing crop, or we grow data about water movement or some things. One of the things you have to realize is oftentimes people get confused about what a drone's position in life is. And when you really think about it, up until this point, most of what we've done with drones is gather data. And the way we've gathered data is by using it as a flying camera. And oftentimes the people say, well, I could get that same picture standing on the ground. And granted, you can take a picture standing on the ground, but the altitude difference between standing on the ground and getting up on a couple hundred feet in the air can really change your perspective on what you can see out there. And as we've seen farm equipment increase in size over the last 20 or 30 years, the patterns that we are looking for when we're trying to evaluate crops have just gotten wider and wider. And it gets more and more challenging standing in the field to figure out what those patterns are. As we look at some bigger drones and some application drones, we see that now we've got spray drones, that the spray drone can actually go out and make applications based on what we saw previously with the data gathering drones. And so up until this point, it's been almost all data gathering, and that has come in a lot of different aerial packages, whether that was manned aircraft or whether that was drones. But now what we can do is we can take the data that we're gathering with these small drones and then apply that to a prescription map and put that prescription map in a spray drone, like you see on the screen. And then from that, we can then take that to the field. So as we move forward, I will show you guys some things that I've got here prepared. So I will share my screen with you.
Really quick, so as Jim is getting ready to share his screen with everybody, I just want to remind you that if you have some questions, please take the time to type them in the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll make sure that they get answered either by text or verbally as we move through the program. All right, thanks.
All right, thanks, Heather. So I kind of covered some of this already as I got started, but it's kind of who is Becks Hybrids, and as Heather told you guys earlier, we're the largest family-owned seed company. We're extremely vertically integrated, which also kind of makes us very unique. It also makes so that there's a lot of career paths at Becks Hybrids. So if you're involved in agriculture and you want to work in agriculture, when you find a company like ours that is so vertically integrated, you could be very interested in computer science, or you could be very interested in graphic arts. And we have all those disciplines within our organization. So we're 600 plus employees and very customer driven. This is, you always, you got to show up your factory. And so here's our primary location at Atlanta, Indiana, but we now have about 7 of those scattered all over the Midwest. And here's kind of the area that we serve. When I started at Becks Hybrids, we served a 60-mile circle around the home location. So things have changed dramatically in the course of my tenure there. When you think about drones and what you can do with them, one of the things that we try to do is we try to talk our customers into making sure it's the things that they want to do. And so when you look at some of the things, you can gather data from production, you can do building inspections if that's a problem. And you think about the fact that, would you like to climb the leg to find out the belts have popped off the top, or would you like to fly up there with a drone so that when you climb that big leg and make that 10-minute climb, you've taken the right tools and the right parts with you. So that can be a big benefit. Then there's a lot of survey and planning that takes place in agriculture. A lot of people think that, yeah, like Mike Bloomberg, that all you got to do is grab a seed, throw it in the ground, and call it good. Well, there's a lot of planning that takes place in successful agriculture. And right now, anybody that's going to be involved in successful agriculture is planning at this time of the year for what they're going to do next year when the sun starts shining and it gets warmed back up. We'll do field tile evaluations. We'll talk about field tile here in a little bit. For those of you who aren't familiar, we'll talk about what it is and how we're going to evaluate it. You'll find lots of promotional videos. Everybody's using drones for promotional videos because, once again, it gives you a different perspective that you didn't have before. Livestock inspections and location. We just finished up here a couple of weeks ago a 4-night stint helping some people try to find a heifer that had gotten loose and was running all over these cornfields. And you could not see her optically because she was shorter than the corn, but we had a thermal drone that could actually see through the corn, and I could see her as well as the gentleman who were trying to chase her down. And she was very skillful at her craft of staying loose. So livestock is an interesting thing. And then, just promotional things that you give to landlords as farmers grow. That's kind of a thing that's changing now. So one of the things that people get confused about is they get caught up in the idea that if they bought a drone, that the value of the output is going to be just like gold. And I've heard people say in meetings that by purchasing a drone, it can put this many dollars back into your farming operation. And I think that's quite a misnomer, and that messes up mainstream image people, because what happens is people they get way too high expectations as to what they're going to get out of those drones. And so when you think about it, the drone can do nothing more than just bring you back a simple photograph. And that's what this is. This is nothing more than a drone that was flying over a field. If you had a long enough stick and a camera, you could do the same thing with a stick and a camera. It's an aerial view. But what this demonstrates is, in this particular picture, what we're looking at is here, if you can follow my cursor, you can see that you've got two different varieties out here. You've got this lighter colored corn and you've got the darker corn. And what we were doing here is we had a corn planter that would plant two varieties at one time. And with programming that somebody like Sheila Downey, that's going to talk to you later, could put into that corn planter, it could plant different varieties and different soil types as across the field, which would help a farmer increase their profitability. Very hard to know if the planter did what you wanted it to as it went across the field. Whereas with the drone, you're able to get up above the crop and you can see the patterns that the corn made. And in Ohio, they're really good about every year they make a tricky looking cornfield where they'll put either the Ohio State logo or something that's Ohio related into it. And they do that with a multi-variety planter, and it's very clever. And they often take pictures of it and use it for promo material. So anyway, this is just a simple photograph. Anybody could do this, and that's the beauty of it. It doesn't take an expensive drone. As you move forward, here's a similar case where this was a customer challenge where the customer was frustrated. This happens to be a wheat field. If you're not familiar with wheat should be harvested sometime 4th of July, plus or minus a few days. In this particular case, where the water had ran across this field, where you see here these green strips, the wheat wasn't maturing correctly. And so the stunted wheat was keeping them from being able to harvest the rest of the wheat, which was frustrating to the grower. And standing on the ground, the pattern didn't show up. So once we got some altitude and got up with a drone, once again, taking a simple photograph, we were able to see that pattern. And by finding that pattern, then we could explain what the problem was. And the grower then, like us, had no control over Mother Nature. So we just had to deal with it and realize that that was what the problem was. Then as we move to the next level, we talked about drones that cost $25,000 and gather imagery that's more valuable. And so this is what a lot of times farmers would call an NDVI. And so this is a vegetative index map. So where the map is green, it means we have thicker, healthier plants. Where the map is red, we have thinner plants. And within an NDVI, it is only relative to other plants within the image. And so the thing that's kind of confusing about it is you could have a field that looks very good from the road, but there would still be better places in the field and lesser places in the field. So you will almost always get a map that shows change in it, even if the field is in pretty good shape. And what you're looking for in a map like this is you're looking for patterns and both patterns that are linear in nature and patterns that are more relatively odd shape, and which is typically Mother Nature. So when you think about, there's lots of ways to capture image. You can do it with aircraft, you can do it with drones, you can do it with satellites. But the thing I always try to remind growers is that 90% of all the images that you get are going to be totally worthless. And that is okay, because when you think about the data that comes back from a drone, it's basically a health report about what's going on with your crop. So oftentimes everybody says, well, the drone went out and it brought back no valuable information. Well, in most cases, what that means is it went out and your crop looks good. And so people get all confused about that. It's like, think about it this way. If you went to the dentist hoping for a horrible report every time you went, that would be a really bad thing. What you want is the dentist to come back and say, man, your teeth look great. You got no more problems. See you in 6 months. But with these images, people want this disaster report because they don't really think it through that it's okay to get a report that's not a disaster report. Here's a prime example. So as you look at this field that lies on our home farm, you see all kinds of red anomalies in this field. And so the one that I've got my cursor over right now, you see is an oddly shapen one. And when you think about oddly shapen anomalies that you find in fields, that is very oftentimes Mother Nature working on you. And so in this particular case, this is a farm that we have farmed for years, and this is a big water hole. As you look at this spot right here, you see this linear spot that goes across this field. And oftentimes we'll find those, and that's what we're looking for a lot of times when we suspect that there's a problem in the operation on the farm. And in this particular case, that pathway is what I call Polaris Ranger blight. And so if you ride a Polaris Ranger from this house to this house all winter long, you end up creating a compaction layer in there that shows up in the growing crop. And you wouldn't think that a light off-road device like that would do that, especially in the off season, but it does, and it shows up in these maps. Now, the thing is, you could show all those things to my father who's been on this farm for years, and he knows all those things. So even though there's a lot going on this map, there's nothing that's going to surprise him because he knows this water hole's here, and he knows he's too cheap to buy the field tile to drain it off. And he knows that we ride that Ranger back and forth, and neither two of those things are going to change. So it's just additional information. So the pitfalls, people guarantee the revenue. They get all wound up about timeliness, and the speed at which you can bring the data back to the farmer is extremely important. As we move into tile, I told you I would talk about field tile briefly. Basically, field tile is a plastic pipe that we put it in the ground. Ohio is rich with field tile because Ohio, in a lot of cases, was either a swamp or a drained lake bed. And so getting rid of excess moisture is important. In this particular case, what we had is we had some tile that we didn't know existed. And it lays right here. You can see where I move my cursor right now. You can see that there are field tile under the ground. And these are tile that are under the ground. They're not laying on top of the ground. This is nothing you can see with the naked eye. But in a growing small crop, because of the way the crop was responding differently over those tile, they showed up. This is a case where we had to do some tile repair. And because we found tile that we didn't know was there, we were able to actually make the improvements and increase our profitability. And that's the key. Drone imagery, playing with drones is all fun and games, but you have to put money back in the farmer's pocket. And that's what's really important. Now, stand counts are one of the first things that we've been able to do that's very analytical. And so stand is very important. When you're planting plants, it is very important that you get every seed that you put in the ground to germinate and come up. Because if you don't get a good stand or you don't get the right number of plants, there's nothing else you can do the rest of the year to make up for that yield. So it's very important that we get those plants up early and that we know that they're out there. And so now we can do that with a drone. We can do small corn like you saw there, which means if we can see it at that size, we can go back in and fix it if something's wrong. And then in that particular case, what we do is we create a map like you see here, where red dots are low population areas, green dots are high population areas, and the numerical value there is the number of plants in an acre. And so we're looking for somewhere in this particular field here in the 20s, and you see that we have a lot of areas in the 16,000. And those 16,000 areas are problematic, but in this particular case, an issue with some sandy ground, and so there wasn't much you could do about it except make sure that you didn't spend money in those areas like you're going to grow 250 bushel corn. You spent money in those areas like you're going to grow 125 bushel corn. And so it was this map helped a farmer figure out how to manage input costs, not try to maximize output. Because if you know what's creating your output shortfall and there's nothing you can do about it, then the next step is to manage your input costs on those acres so that you don't throw good money after a poor piece of land. So from that, I do want to talk about real briefly as I wrap up here that if you get the opportunity as a student to get a Part 107 certification, please take advantage of that. I think what you're going to find is there will be lots and lots of disciplines that are looking for people that have additional certifications. I have a son who happens to be a lineman, and the electrical people are looking for people that are not only good linemen, but could also fly a drone. And so there's going to be lots of uses in agriculture. There's going to be construction, electrical people, insurance industry, lots of industries. So if the opportunity presents itself that as a student that you could get a Part 107 certification or at least do the training to go take the test, take advantage of that, because we spend lots of money at Becks Hybrids trying to get adults that don't have that certification through the certification and trained. And so there's lots of different ways to get that training. You can do online training. Hopefully you'll have presented to you so in a school setting sometime as you progress through your education process, but take advantage of that no matter where it becomes available to you. So we look at it as a great way to build market share and build relationships. And with that, I want to show you guys a couple of videos here of the drone actually spraying and it off. So what we should have initially here is a video of the spray drone. And so once the spray drone, so what we do is we basically set the spray drone up on the software that you see up here on the desktop. And then as we move into the spray drone video, you're going to see that the spray drone will actually follow the job that we've given it. So the spray drone is a company out of Texas, really neat domestic product. We're very excited to work with these guys. And they are just recently graduated college students. So you saw the spray drone take off there, and it's doing what we call ferrying to the field. So it goes at a higher altitude to the area that we're going to call the field. Then it'll drop itself down to its application height. And it does that so that if it has to clear a fence row or anything that's parked in the way, it goes up above that and moves to the field. Then once it gets to the field, it starts spraying, and it'll spray out the predetermined pattern like we saw a minute ago on that desktop with the software that manages it. So the drone will spray back and forth in patterns. It knows enough to know if it runs out of fluid, it knows if it runs out of batteries, or it knows if it completed the job that you're doing. And so you can see here, since this is a very small job, it's not going to run out of fluid or batteries. And so it's going to complete the mission by making multiple passes. And then when it makes its last pass, what it's going to do is it's going to climb back up, and then it'll come home at its safe height for transfer, which we refer to as its ferrying height. So exciting technology, all that's done on the computer. We've also got another video that shows this a very similar drone operating in a large field setting, because not only can we use these to do small jobs like we were just doing there in front of our facility at Becks Hybrids, but we can also take these and in this particular case, we were putting fungicide on some corn, and you can actually see the corn deflect behind this drone as it's flying along. And so we used a drone to take a video of a drone. And so what we were doing this particular day was we were applying fungicide. That would have either been done with a high clearance sprayer, or we would have done it with another aircraft. And so in this particular case, we did it with our spray drone. That spray drone can cover about 4 acres per tank. So it's very exciting. I think that this technology is quickly heading towards downsizing some equipment and making it so that we can do more things with higher trained people and get more work done more efficiently. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sheila, who will better explain how we're going to get that data into it. So Heather, it's all yours.
Okay, so it seems to me that we've learned a lot of great ways to collect data as well as to apply some of that data we've collected using drones on our farms. So when we're looking at some of the questions that we have beforehand from some of the schools, this from Urbana High School, you know, Sheila, I'm hoping that you will help us to understand a little bit better how to utilize and analyze that data so that a farmer like my farm at home could make a better decision as I move forward.
Sure, Heather. That's some of the stuff I'm going to talk about a little bit. So guys, good afternoon. My name is Sheila Downey. I am the Regional Precision Farming Specialist at Becks Hybrids. I cover the eastern half of our marketing area. So Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, and the eastern part of Illinois. So I cover that whole area there. I have worked at Becks for 6 years. Prior to Becks, I worked at a fertilizer company where we pulled soil samples and we wrote fertilizer recs and planting recommendations for the farmers. And then before that, I worked for another company where we pulled soil samples and we sold and serviced ag leader equipment, or equipment for the farmers to put in their tractors, to put in their combines, to help record a lot of this data. So I've got a background in precision ag before I started with Becks. Prior to that, I went to Purdue University. I studied farm management because I grew up on a hog farm. And so my plan was to take over the family hog farm when I graduated. Got married and moved an hour and a half south instead, but I'm still using a lot of the things I studied at Purdue in the ag econ department for what I do on a day-to-day basis. So even going to college and getting a degree, you might not think you're using it. Most of the time you're using a lot of stuff in your degree. It might not be the way you had envisioned, but I'm still using a lot of the precision or a lot of the farm management concepts from Purdue in everyday work here at Becks. So on the farm server team at Becks, what farm server is it's our precision farming platform that we've built here. It's our software that we're building for our customers to use to take all that data that they're collecting and analyze it, learn from it, make some decisions off of it. I like to compare this to kind of doing our taxes. Farmers are really good about collecting checks, depositing checks, paying bills, things like that. But when it comes to their taxes, lots of times they hire somebody or they go consult with someone to help them fill out all that paperwork. Precision farming can be the same way. Farmers are really good about running the monitors, collecting the data, making sure things are calibrated, and then getting it into some kind of software program. But after that, it's nice for them to have someone to help them analyze the data, run some different tests, yield by hybrid, yield by soil test. We'll get into some of those here in a little bit. But that's part of my role, is the customer service, helping the customer, helping the farmer understand the data they're collecting and what they can learn from it. Another part of my job at Becks now is to take some of the ideas that our farmers have or the things that they need and turn it over to our dev team. So at Becks, Jim had mentioned earlier, there's lots of different career opportunities. One of those is in our data and dev department. So we have 60 different people that work in our data and dev department at Becks. They are employees of Becks, but they don't work directly in ag from their standpoint. These are guys that are designing farm server. They're designing our online ordering system for seed and things like that. They're coding, things like that. So a lot of these guys, a lot of these coworkers of mine, they've never set foot on a farm, but they're helping us out on the farm by building the software. I can't build software, so it's nice that we can work together as a team. I bring them ideas from the field, they help build it, and it works very well that way. So that's some of my job that I do at Becks today. It's not the same. Every day is different. Someday I'm at home sitting in front of my computer working on different analysis projects or queries or uploading data. Other days I'm out in the field. So I did a little video to show you guys just an example of what part of one of my days might look like.
Are sitting in a combine cab. It is in between crops for this particular farmer. He's going from beans to corn, and it's gonna rain today, so while he's switching the head and making some other changes in the combine, we're gonna go ahead and pull the data off the monitor and get it in his farm server account. So here's a copy or picture of his monitor. He's got a 2630 John Deere monitor in his combine. We're gonna stick our flash drive right here. We're gonna stick that in the side of the monitor. Maybe I can see it. There we go. On these type of monitors, it automatically detects if you have a USB in there. Pops up, it says data transfer. So it's asking you if you want to export the data, and we do. So I'm going to hit export data. It will take the data from the harvest profile and move it to this flash drive. It will not delete it off this particular monitor. Every monitor is a little bit different there. That's how these 2630s work. So it's going to transfer the files from the monitor to the flash drive here. Again, these guys have been running beans. They're switching to corn. So what we're doing is just pulling off the bean data before they move to corn, just in case something were to happen. Check some things on the monitor, make sure it was recording right, make sure all their settings are good, and make sure all the data looks good. Once it's done exporting to the flash drive, we'll pull that out. I've got my laptop sitting right here. Hopefully you guys can see that. And we'll put that flash drive right here on the side of the monitor, or the side of the laptop, upload it to his farm server account. And then farm server will process the data, it'll match it to those particular fields, and he'll be able to run several different reports. Yield by hybrid, yield by soil type. If a farmer did some variable rate planting, he could do yield by management zone. There's also a query tool in here where we can highlight certain areas of the field and look to see how that area of the field did, how many acres were in that area, what the yield was, what the average moisture was, things like that. Collecting yield data is really important for these guys. It gives them an idea of how their fields performed. It also gives them the opportunity to layer different pieces of data, planting data, spray data, soil tests, soil type, things like that on top of it. Then they can go back and analyze what happened, why did the field perform the way it did, make some decisions off of that, and hopefully improve their operation for next year. So guys, thank you so much for following along while we're sitting in the cab today. I hope you're having a good day, and we'll catch you later.
Great, thanks. So that hopefully gives you a little bit of an idea, just a snippet of some of the things that I do in my role out in the field, helping these guys collect the data and put it into a form that they can use. So the screen you see here has got a couple of examples. When we're talking about yield, we're talking about how that field produced. So that field down there, or that picture down there at the bottom with the red and the green and the yellow, the green areas in that field produced more than the red areas. That doesn't necessarily mean the red was bad. It just wasn't as good as the green areas. But a farmer is going to look at this just like Jim talked about with drone imagery. He's going to look for patterns. What created these patterns in the field? You can see there where there's darker green and lighter green. We're going to start going backwards. What happened in the year in this field that triggered the higher yields, or that triggered the lower yields? So up there in the picture on the right, that's a picture of their planting map. They planted three different products out in that field. They planted a purple product, the green, and the blue. Okay, so you guys can see all those there. In this particular story, or this field, that blue is a replant. So it got washed out. They came back later in the year, replanted that particular area. That's probably why that area is red down in the yield map. So when you sit down with the farmer and you start going through these maps and start looking at things, they can start to help fill in the gaps of the story that the data doesn't quite tell you. So yield data can also help with record keeping and things like that. While we're talking about record keeping, talking about data analysis, it's not just yield and planting, okay? There's lots of other things in there. Nitrogen data and fertilizer maps, spraying. Lots of times our farmers do test strips. They'll spray part of the field with one tank mix. They might spray another part of the field with another tank mix. They might do strips. You know, maybe this fungicide is new to the market and they just want to try it in a part of the field to see how it does. By having all of that data in one location, in one software program, such as Farm Server, that's what we're highlighting, or that's my wheelhouse. By having it in one spot, these guys, the farmers, can start to dig in deep, figure out what worked, what didn't, and what they can learn and apply for next year. So you can see up here in the top right, that picture there is a picture of the field where we flew a drone. We flew a Phantom like Jim had in that picture. And when it flew across the field, it took a stand count of the corn. It counted how many plants were in that particular area. And from this image, if the farmer needed to go out and replant, he could take this image and turn it into a zone map and tell the planter in this particular area where the red is, you know, plant a thicker population. In the green areas, don't plant any, or so on and so forth. So we can take this data and make it actionable in the sense where we can create a rec from it, recommendation, put it in the combine or the planter monitor, excuse me, and go out and plant. We can also take other layers, not just stand counts, but other layers of data to build other types of zones or other types of maps where we can use our inputs efficiently so that we can have the best return on our investment. Okay, so down there at the bottom, that's an example of a zone map. We used yield data, we used soil types, we used elevation, and we used the CEC from the soil test to help build these zones. Soil types are not the same across fields. They vary. They vary depending on lots of different things, different textures. Elevation also varies across the fields. And so depending on what that farmer needs for his field, we can use all those different pieces of information to build the zones, to make the decisions so that next year we can do the best possible job that we can to raise the best crop. So Heather, what other questions do we have?
We don't actually have any questions. You guys were so amazing. We didn't get any questions at all, but there is that one question at the beginning I thought maybe we could refocus on. In your opinion and in Jim's opinion, what do you guys think is the newest technology that they're able to afford to use in their field? So if you were just getting into technology, I mean, would it be a precision planner? I heard Jim mention that, a phantom drone, a more expensive, application drone, like a spray drone. Like, in your opinion, if you were to recommend that to a new farmer or somebody even farming a small acreage, what would you go for?
Jim, you want to go first?
All right, so funny you asked that question because we reside here on a small farm in central Indiana, and recently my adult son decided that he was going to farm our farm in place of the person who had been farming it. And it was my opinion to him, who was getting started from scratch, I said that he needed to be involved in precision agriculture to be competitive into the future. And if his plan was to farm for 20 years on 200 acres, that he probably should buy a tractor that had guidance and some other opportunities to do some precision applications. And so that's what he did. So, we probably are the anomaly where we are the only guy planting with a 6-row planter on full guidance. But to be competitive with those that are farming today, you're going to have to farm at that level of competency to continue into the future. So I really think that probably guidance and knowing where you're at for one thing, and whether that's on the combine or whether that's in your tractor, once you start knowing where you're at and gathering data, then you can start making more educated decisions. The struggle that we've had in agriculture for years is lots of the decisions that are made in agriculture are made based on emotions and feelings and perceptions. And when you make business decisions based on those three parameters, you can make some very bad decisions and not good production decisions. And so once you can start gathering data, this is better at because, or at this rate, then you can start making improvements. It kind of goes back to that deal. Those things that you measure, you can usually improve. If you insist on not measuring them, then you're probably not going to get better at what you're doing. So that would kind of be where I would start off, and then I'd kick it to Sheila to see what her thoughts are as well.
Well, I guess from my perspective and the way the ag industry is right now, I would love to see farmers utilize the data or the technology in their equipment today, because there are lots and lots of farmers out there that have the monitors and it's recording, but that's about where it stops. So let's actually utilize the data and find a software program to put it in, such as Farm Server. Farm Server, like I said, it's free for all of our Becks customers. So that eliminates that software cost there, but utilizing the data utilizing the equipment that you have now is a great place to start. From there, you can build upon it, but just using what you have is where I would recommend everybody starts.
So it sounds like, Jim, first buy a planter or a combine or something that will help you to get that data. And then once you get that data and that guidance, as you said, then really kind of hunker down with somebody who knows what they're doing, like you, Sheila, for example, and really look at what you're spending, what you're paying out, and what you're collecting and bringing in, and then develop a plan so that in a course of a certain amount of time, you're able to get that return on investment or that ROI that you spoke of earlier, so that you're making the most sense, and you're also doing things as sustainably as possible. So you're using less inputs, you're getting better outputs on your farm and increasing your yield later on.
Yes, all those things are the case. And you touched on it briefly. People are always concerned that farmers are using excess inputs. Well, I think if most folks saw the checks that have to be written to purchase those inputs, they'd realize that farmers don't have much interest in using excess inputs. It's not like your yard where you want to make your yard look better than everybody else's in the neighborhood, so you put on twice the fertilizer. This is a whole different game out here when you're writing checks for $500,000 to the fertilizer company. You're not looking to try to impress your friends and neighbors. What you want to do is make sure that you grow a crop that feeds the world and does it the most affordably way possible.
Yeah, that's a great way to end this virtual field trip, actually, is really helping students to understand all of the different areas that are needed in careers as we're moving forward. So, if you have a love for chemistry, think about soil science. If you have a love for microbiology or genetics, there's definitely a place for you in seed production and trait development, especially any form of biotechnology there. But if you're just that kid that likes to mess around with things, you could go into either the mechanical side or, of course, the technology side too. And if you're a person who's a problem solver and a data cruncher, wow, is there a place for you in agriculture as we're moving forward? And we're trying to make everything, as usable and as sustainable as we can. So all while producing a great crop in the long term too. So I just want to say thank you guys so much. Remember, this is BecksHybrids.com that you guys can go to and learn more about just some of the differences or the opportunities that they offer there. And don't forget that tomorrow, if you can go to that next slide for me, Dan, you'll see the opportunity to be a part of a field scouting lesson tomorrow in the field, and then the following day a different career panel where we'll have some Nick that created that sprayer drone, right? He'll actually be on that career panel on Thursday, and you can talk to him. And just to kind of give you an idea, he had no ag background. He started off in aeronautical engineering because there was a place open for him, if I remember correctly. Is that right? So he's about, what, 25, something like that. And he's living the dream right now. So if you have any interest in just opportunity, agriculture sounds like it might be a great place for you. Jim, you started off, you said, over 30 years ago, and as in an area, and now look at where you are now. So you have so much fun talking to people and letting them to see all the fun stuff that's out there, I think. As far as that goes. So we just want to say thank you to Sheila and to Jim. And if you have any questions for them later on, let us know. We would gladly connect you. Hold on, I got a couple more questions that just popped up. Oh, okay. Just as a reminder, please come back and see us tomorrow at 1 o'clock and Thursday at 1 o'clock, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Sheila. Have a great day.
Thank you.